My parents called me a disgrace, so I stayed silent, smiled, and reached into my bag. Stick with me. I sat at the dinner table, hands resting quietly in my lap, while my mother's voice cut through the room like glass. She didn't raise it, but every word felt sharp. She talked about shame, about how I had thrown away my future, about how people would laugh when they heard I dropped out of law school. My father didn't interrupt her. He just sat there, his face stiff, his eyes cold, adding a few words here and there that felt even heavier. Wasted potential, he said, shaking his head slowly. I didn't respond. They kept going, one after the other, as if my silence gave them more space to speak. They expected something, an excuse, an apology, maybe even tears. That's what I used to do. I used to explain, defend, beg them to understand. But not today. Today, I just listened. The room felt tight, like the air itself was holding its breath. My mother leaned forward, searching my face for a reaction. My father tapped his fingers lightly on the table, waiting for me to break. But I didn't. Inside, I felt something strange. Not anger, not sadness, just calm. A quiet, steady calm that didn't match the storm in front of me. It made my silence feel heavier, almost uncomfortable for them. Say something, Alara. My mother snapped, her patience finally cracking. I looked at her, then at my father. For a moment, no one spoke. The ticking clock on the wall suddenly sounded louder than anything else. Still, I said nothing. Their frustration grew. I could see it in their faces, in the way their voices became sharper, faster, more desperate to pull something out of me. But the more they pushed, the quieter I became. And then slowly I smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just enough to make them pause, just enough to confuse them. My father frowned. What's so funny? I didn't answer. Instead, I moved my hand calmly to the chair beside me, where my bag rested. Their eyes followed the movement, curiosity replacing anger for a brief second. Without rushing, without a word, I reached inside my bag. It wasn't always like this, but the signs were there for years. I remember bringing home my first big achievement from school, holding the paper with pride, waiting for a smile, a simple, well done. My mother barely looked at it before placing it aside. She asked why it wasn't higher. My father nodded and said I could do better if I tried harder. That moment stayed with me longer than the result itself. At family gatherings, it got worse. I would sit quietly while they compared me to others. Someone's daughter was already in medical school. Someone's son had won awards. My name only came up as an example of what not to be. They smiled while saying it, like it was normal, like it was helpful. Learn from them, my mother would say softly, but it never felt kind. Every time I tried to share an idea, it was brushed away. If I spoke about what I wanted, they called it unrealistic. If I made a choice, they corrected it. Slowly, my life stopped feeling like mine. It felt like a plan written by someone else, and I was just expected to follow it. Their love always came with conditions. When I listened, they were warm. When I obeyed, they were proud. But the moment I questioned anything, the distance returned. Silence, disappointment, cold looks. It was like I had to earn their approval again and again. At first, I tried to fight it. I explained myself. I argued. I tried to make them understand what I felt. But every time I spoke, it only made things worse. My words were twisted, my feelings dismissed. I always ended up feeling smaller than before. So one day I stopped. I stopped explaining. I stopped arguing. I stopped asking for their approval. Instead, I started watching. I listened carefully, not to respond, but to understand. I noticed patterns, reactions, expectations. I learned when to stay quiet and when to simply nod. But silence didn't mean giving up. Behind that silence, I began to think differently. I started planning my own path, slowly, carefully, without telling anyone. While they believed I was becoming less, I was actually building something inside myself. Piece by piece, in quiet moments, I began to create a life they couldn't see. And I didn't need them to see it. Not yet. The decision did not come in one loud moment. It came quietly, after many small thoughts that refused to leave my mind. I was sitting in a lecture hall, staring at pages filled with words I no longer cared about. Around me, everyone was focused, writing notes, asking questions, chasing a future they clearly wanted. I tried to feel the same, but something inside me stayed empty. It wasn't confusion. It was clarity. For the first time, I admitted the truth to myself. This was not my dream. It never had been. It was my parents' dream, carefully placed in my hands, shaped by their expectations, not mine. I had followed it for so long that I almost forgot to ask what I truly wanted. That day, I didn't panic. I didn't feel fear the way I thought I would. Instead, I felt calm. A quiet understanding settled in my chest. I knew I had to leave, but I also knew how they would react. The disappointment, the anger, the words I had heard before, only louder this time. I didn't want another fight. I didn't want to explain something they had never tried to understand. So I made my decision in silence. I started looking into the process of withdrawing. I read every step carefully, making sure there would be no mistakes. I filled out the form slowly, double-checking everything. My hands were steady the entire time. There was no dramatic moment. No announcement at dinner. No argument waiting to happen. One morning, I simply submitted the request. And just like that, it was done. When my parents found out, it was not for me. The news reached them in a simple, formal way. To them, it looked like I had given up, like I had lost direction, like I had made a careless mistake that would ruin my future. They thought I was falling apart, but I wasn't. This was the first real decision I had made for myself. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't emotional. It was planned, quiet, and firm. For the first time, I chose uncertainty over control. And even though I didn't know every step ahead, I could feel something forming inside me, a vision, still unclear but strong enough to follow. I didn't need them to understand. I just needed to begin. The nights became longer after I left law school. While the house slept, I stayed awake in my room, the soft glow of my laptop lighting the dark walls. The world felt quiet at that hour, like no one was watching, like I could finally breathe and think without pressure. I didn't have everything figured out. Most nights, I didn't even know if I was doing the right thing. I tried different ideas, learned new skills, made mistakes, and started again. There were moments when nothing worked, when every effort felt like it was going nowhere. I applied for small online jobs, anything that could help me earn and learn at the same time. Some people ignored my applications. Some rejected me without a reason. A few gave me a chance, small tasks with small pay. I took all of them seriously. Every rupee I earned, I saved or reinvested. I didn't spend on things I didn't need. Slowly, I began to understand how things worked, how to manage money, how to improve my skills, how to think differently. During the day, my parents watched me with quiet disappointment. They believed I was wasting time, drifting without direction. They didn't ask what I was doing, and I didn't tell them. It was easier that way. Their silence matched mine, but for different reasons. They had already decided who I was. I let them believe it. Each day, I took another small step. It didn't look like much from the outside, but inside, something was growing. My confidence, my understanding, my control over my own life, it all started building slowly, piece by piece. There were nights I felt tired, almost ready to give up. But then I would remind myself why I started. I wasn't trying to prove anything to them anymore. I was building something for myself. Failure became part of my routine. It stopped scaring me. Instead, it taught me what to fix, what to change, what to try next. I stopped seeing mistakes as the end and started seeing them as steps forward. No one clapped for me. No one noticed the effort. But I didn't need them to. My silence became my shield. It protected my focus, my plans, and everything I was slowly creating. And with every quiet step, I moved closer to something bigger, something they still couldn't see. The moment came quietly, but it cut deeper than anything before. We were at a family gathering, a crowded living room filled with soft laughter and polite conversations. Relatives I hadn't seen in months sat around, asking questions, sharing updates, comparing lives in ways that always felt like a silent competition. I stayed near the corner, listening more than speaking. Then someone asked about me. "What is Alara doing now?" they said with a curious smile. For a second, there was a pause. I looked at my parents, waiting without expecting much. My mother gave a small laugh, the kind that tries to sound light but carries something heavier. "Oh, her," she said. "She's the one who couldn't make it." A few people chuckled softly, unsure how to react. My father added, shaking his head slightly, "She left law school. Still figuring things out." The words were simple, but they landed hard. I felt every eye in the room shift toward me, measuring, judging, deciding. The space around me suddenly felt smaller. For a moment, everything slowed down, the voices, the movement, even my own breath. But I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. I didn't correct them. I didn't show the sting that burned quietly inside my chest. I just stood there, calm on the outside. Inside, something changed. It wasn't pain anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was something stronger, something sharper. A quiet decision formed in that moment, clear and unshakable. That night, when we returned home, I went straight to my room. The house was silent again, but this time, the silence felt different. I sat in front of my laptop, staring at the screen for a moment. The memory of their words played in my mind, over and over. The one who couldn't make it. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my work. I stayed up longer than usual, pushing myself harder than ever before. I reviewed everything I had been building, fixing mistakes, improving ideas, learning faster. Every second felt focused, controlled, purposeful. That moment didn't break me. It gave me direction. I realized I didn't need to prove anything with arguments or explanations. Words would never change how they saw me. Only results would. From that night on, I stopped thinking about what they believed and started focusing on what I would become. Quietly, steadily, I moved forward, stronger than before. Things did not change overnight, but slowly my work began to show results. At first, it was something small, a project that finally worked, a client who was happy and came back again, a payment that was higher than anything I had earned before. It wasn't big enough for anyone else to notice, but for me, it meant everything. I kept going. More people started reaching out. My work improved, and with it, my confidence grew. I began to understand what I was building, how to grow it, how to make it stronger. Each step led to another opportunity. Then came bigger moments, an offer to collaborate, a contract that lasted months instead of days. People who trusted my ideas and were willing to invest in them. I read every detail carefully, made decisions slowly, and chose what felt right. Momentum started building. My small work turned into something real, something stable, something that had direction and purpose. It was no longer just late nights and quiet effort. It was becoming a business. And still, I told no one. Not my parents, not my relatives, not even the people who once doubted me. I kept everything to myself, protecting it the same way I had protected it from the beginning. At home, nothing had changed. My parents still looked at me the same way. They still believed I was lost, still thought I was wasting time. Sometimes they would make small comments, reminding me of what I had left behind. Other times, they would simply ignore me. I let them. There was something almost strange about it. My world was growing, expanding in ways I had once only imagined. New calls, new emails, new plans filled my days. I was moving forward faster than ever before. But in their eyes, I was standing still. The difference between what they saw and what was real became almost unreal. Two completely different stories, existing side by side. And I didn't try to correct them. I stayed quiet, just like before. Because this time, my silence wasn't about fear. It was about control. I was no longer waiting for approval. I was no longer explaining my choices. I was building something bigger than their expectations, something they couldn't understand yet. And I knew one day they would see it. But not because I told them. Because they would have no choice. The biggest moment came without noise. It started with an email. Simple, short, but different from the others. A major company wanted to talk. They had been watching my work for some time. They were interested in what I had built. I read the message twice, then closed my laptop. I didn't rush. I didn't react. I just sat there for a moment, letting it settle in my mind. The next few weeks were intense. Meetings, calls, long discussions. People with sharp questions and serious faces. They looked at every detail, my numbers, my plans, my risks. Nothing was small to them. Every decision felt important. There was pressure, but I didn't show it. I stayed calm, just like I had trained myself to be. I listened more than I spoke. When I answered, I chose my words carefully. I didn't let emotions guide me. I focused on facts, on value, on what I knew was real. They made offers. At first, I didn't accept. I studied everything. I asked questions. I took time to understand what they really wanted and what I deserved. This was not just about money. It was about control, about respect, about the future of everything I had built. The numbers kept changing. The stakes kept rising. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I didn't step back. I remembered every quiet night, every failure, every moment I kept going when no one believed in me. That gave me strength. That kept me steady. Finally, the deal was ready. I read the final agreement slowly, line by line. No rush. No fear. Just focus. Then I signed. $87 million. The number looked unreal on paper, but I didn't react the way most people would expect. No loud excitement. No celebration. No calls to anyone. Just silence. After it was done, I sat alone in my room, the same place where everything had started. The same desk, the same quiet walls, the same soft light. Nothing around me had changed, but everything had changed. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a moment, not to escape, but to feel it fully. The journey, the work, the truth of what I had done. There were no tears, no smile even, just a calm, steady feeling, controlled, certain, and finally complete. I am back at the same dinner table. Nothing looks different. The same chairs, the same plates, the same quiet tension in the air. My mother sits across from me, her expression tight. My father is beside her, his posture stiff, his eyes already filled with judgment. And then it starts again. Their voices rise, one after the other, just like before. My mother talks about disappointment, about how I wasted everything they gave me. My father adds his words, colder, sharper, saying I threw away a future people would do anything for. The sentences feel familiar, almost repeated from memory. But this time, something is different. Not them. Me. I sit there calmly, listening to every word without interrupting. I don't look away. I don't react. My face stays still, my breathing slow and steady. They expect the same girl they used to control. The one who would try to explain, who would feel hurt, who would break under their words. But she isn't here anymore. My silence is no longer weak. It carries weight now. Every second I don't respond makes the room feel heavier. Their voices begin to sound louder, almost desperate, as if they are trying harder to reach me. But they can't, because I am no longer where they think I am. Inside, I feel completely calm. Not empty. Not numb. Just certain. I know something they don't. I carry a truth they can't see yet. And that changes everything. My mother leans forward, her eyes searching mine, trying to find a reaction. My father shakes his head again, repeating the same words, expecting them to finally break through. But they don't. I just listen. The silence between their sentences grows longer. The space around us feels tight, filled with something they don't understand. And then, slowly, their voices begin to lose strength. Not because they are done speaking, but because my silence is stronger. Beside me, my bag rests quietly on the chair. They don't notice it. To them, it's just another small detail, something unimportant, something easy to ignore. But it isn't. It holds everything. I let them finish. I let every word fall into the silence I've created. I give them the moment they think they control. Then I sit there, still calm, still steady. And I know what comes next. They have no idea. But they will. I finally move. Slowly, without any hurry, I reach for the bag beside me. The small sound of the zipper breaks the silence in the room. My parents stop talking for a second, their eyes shifting toward me, confused by the sudden movement. I don't look at them. I open the bag and take out a set of papers. Neatly arranged, clean, simple. Nothing about them looks dramatic, but everything about them matters. Without saying a word, I place the first document on the table. Then another. And another. The sound of each paper touching the table feels louder than it should. The room becomes completely quiet now. No more accusations. No more lectures. Just silence. My father frowns slightly, leaning forward. My mother looks at the papers, but doesn't touch them yet, like she's unsure what she's seeing. I sit back in my chair, calm, my hands resting again. Still no words. Finally, my father picks up one sheet. His eyes move across the page slowly. At first, his expression doesn't change. Then his brows pull together, and he reads it again, more carefully this time. My mother reaches for another paper. Her hands are slower now, less confident. She scans the page, then stops at a number. Her eyes stay there longer than expected. The silence grows heavier. What is this? She asks, her voice quieter than before. I don't answer. They keep reading. Financial statements. Clear numbers. Clean records. Growth charts. And then the final pages, acquisition papers, signed and official. The numbers are too large to ignore. I watch them as the meaning begins to settle in. Confusion turns into something else. Something deeper. Their faces shift, their posture changes. Shock. My father's hand tightens slightly around the paper. My mother's lips part, but no words come out. They look at each other for a brief moment, as if trying to confirm what they are seeing is real. But it is. The room feels different now. The same table, the same walls, but the air has changed. The weight in the room has shifted, moving away from them and settling quietly with me. Their authority, the control they held for so long, begins to fade right in front of me. Not with noise. Not with anger. Just with truth. I don't smile. I don't speak. I don't need to. Because everything that needed to be said is already on the table. And for the first time, they have nothing left to say. No one speaks for a long moment. The papers are still on the table. My parents sit frozen, their eyes moving between the numbers and my face, as if they are trying to understand how everything changed without them seeing it. I don't rush them. I don't interrupt the silence. When I finally move, it is slow and calm. I reach into my bag again and take out 2 small envelopes. I place them gently on the table, next to the documents. My father looks at them first, then at me. My mother hesitates before picking one up. Her hands are not as steady as before. What is this? She asks quietly. Tickets, I say, my voice soft but clear. They both look at me now, waiting. For a trip. I continue. All of us. They don't speak. The confusion is still there, but now it is mixed with something else, uncertainty. There's only one condition, I add. My father straightens slightly, as if trying to find his voice again, but nothing comes out. I meet their eyes, steady and calm. This time, you listen, I say. Not to judge. Not to control. Just listen. The words are simple, but they carry everything I have held inside for years. My mother lowers her gaze, looking at the envelope in her hands. The confidence she once had is gone. The sharpness in her voice has disappeared, replaced by something quieter, something unsure. My father opens his mouth as if to speak, but stops. He looks at the papers again, then back at me. For the first time, he doesn't have an answer. And I don't wait for one. I stand up slowly from the table. There is no anger in me. No need to prove anything more. The weight I carried for so long is no longer there. I'm not asking for approval, I say gently. I never needed it. They listen now, not because I forced them to, but because they finally understand. I pick up my bag and pause for a moment, looking at them one last time. Not as someone seeking validation, but as someone who has already found her place. This was never about winning an argument. It was about becoming someone they could no longer define. The revenge was never loud. It was quiet, steady, and complete. I didn't just prove them wrong. I outgrew them. And as I walk away from the table, the silence behind me feels different, softer, heavier, and finally honest.